come. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the f*** is wrong with you?
Welcome to What Franklin. Chip Franklin here with you. Man, there's a lot going on today, and we're going to try to fit it all into this hour, so I appreciate you being here. If you turn on Monday Night Football, like millions of Americans did, big game, Bills, Bengals, a lot of excitement, a lot of drama. None of it mattered 5 minutes into the game as Damar Hamlin fell to the ground and has apparently suffered some sort of cardiac issue that still threatens his life. We're trying to find out the latest. Here's a little bit from last night's coverage.
We're following some late-breaking and upsetting news out of Cincinnati tonight. This is actually something that's just happened at the Monday Night Football game tonight between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. It happened right before the top of the hour. It was in the first quarter of the game. A safety for the Buffalo Bills named Damar Hamlin, he's in the number 3 jersey in white there. He made a tackle against another player, and then he fell to the ground. We'll show you that again. He tackles the gentleman number 85 in the dark-colored jersey from the Bengals.
All right, I'm not gonna continue to show that. However, it's important to understand that this was not, if you haven't seen it, this was not a vicious hit by another player trying to hurt someone. It was not targeting. This was, for all intents and purposes, a classic tackle, how you're supposed to make them. What happened afterwards, though, is upsetting, and that's what upsets me the most. Whenever the NFL tells you they care about these young men, remember last night, as a 24-year-old man was getting CPR on the field. I've never seen that. I actually, that's not true. I've seen an umpire once get it in a minor league game, but that's it. So they see their teammate on the ground getting CPR, and if you've seen any of the video, you've seen the faces of these athletes. As you can imagine, some of these guys are actually closer to their teammates than maybe some members of their family. They go through, months and months and months of pressure and leaning on each other in this team sport that, granted, has a lot of issues from CTE to injuries, and also the plantation mentality of many of these owners. But nonetheless, these young men are living their dream. And for it to happen like this, and then after they take him off the field, for the league and we don't know exactly where this came, but it came down from the refs. But it came down, we believe it came from the commissioner himself, is, give him 5 minutes to warm up and then get back out on the field. The coaches said, no, we're taking our teams off the field, as they should have, and the game was suspended, and we don't know what's going to happen. Joining us right now is a friend of mine. He is also a 5-time Major League All-Star. He hosts his own podcast. You can find it everywhere. His name is Adam Jones. He's nice enough to join us from his place in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. Adam, over the years, whether it's in baseball, it could be a pitch to the face. It can be a head-first slide. We've all seen it. We've seen the Fosse hit and Pete Rose over the years. Just a lot of possible ways for an athlete to get injured. Watching the video of this, what was your feeling? What were you going through there? Because I know you know a lot of professional football players too. It's a community of athletes.
Well, first off, prayers for Damar Hamlin, his family, his friends, his loved ones, his kids, his friends, T. Higgins, everybody on that field. I mean, obviously he's the one going through it.
Hey, Adam, we got a little audio. Got a little audio issue. Can you try to put that in again? Yeah. Thanks, bud.
Is it better?
It's still kind of breaking up on us just a bit.
Oh, let me just fuck it. Is that better?
No, it's still doing that breakup. Pull you out. I'll come back to you. We'll work on it.
There we go.
Okay, thanks. I'll be right back with you. What?
Better.
Oh, I think it's better. Give me a little more volume, maybe. This is live TV, folks. So it's just, these things happen. And Adam was
more cowbell.
Yeah, more. Yeah. Now it's still messing up. Why don't you fire it back up and turn it back on? I think that's the key. I'll come back to you in just a second. Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
All right. Thanks. There have been quite a few. I tweeted what I read to you earlier last night, and so I think it really connected with people, with tens of thousands of people coming on and just talking about just how angry they are, the way the NFL and professional sports treats these young men. I know that many of you will watch this and you'll say to yourselves, well, they're getting paid, tens of millions of dollars. And that's true. That's true. But it doesn't mean you sacrifice your life. It doesn't mean that when you turn 50 years old, you can't remember where you parked your car in a parking lot because CTE has started to ravage your brain. What happened last night wasn't one of those scenarios, but the reaction of the NFL and of others, Skip Bayless, who is on that show with Shannon Sharp called Undisputed, he tweeted out something that obviously was insensitive, although he tried to rally it in the end to try to get there. He wrote, "No doubt the NFL is considering postponing the rest of the game, but how? This late in the season, a game of this magnitude is crucial to the regular season outcome, which suddenly seems so irrelevant." The last part of that tells me that I think he realized what he was saying was wrong. And now the league, of course, and many players are attacking him. Des Bryant wrote, "We need to cancel Skip Bayless as soon as possible." Isaiah Thomas of NBA fame wrote, "I hope they fire you, bro. For you to even think of the game is very sad." I tell you what, it is to me. This is one of these moments. And Adam Jones joins us again. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. Skip Bayless. I don't know if you saw his tweet. I mean, a lot of
Chip.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, bud? Are we good? Oh,
What?
this is live. It's okay. But the thing about this, when I watch this, I
don't know what is wrong with this thing. This is brutal. Live TV.
You sound great. You sound great.
Me.
Can you sound great if you can hear me, Adam? It's okay. Some of the comments we're getting here are obviously, real lost. I'll throw them up here so people can see. I totally agree with you. I think Bayless has shown this before. It is, I don't know. I think one of the things about what happened last night that bothers me the most, and my good Ron Filipkowski, who you've seen on the show before, he touched on it, but many of these anti-vaxxers were using this moment to try to connect this to vaccines, saying that, in idiots, everybody from Kelly McEnany, the former press secretary, and I don't know what the hell these people are doing and what they're trying to do. What happened last night was an accident, and it was something that we hopefully, as we move forward. Adam, are we together now, bud?
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, you sound great, bud. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well,
so let me just ask you. I mean, as a professional athlete, and again, we've I assist on his podcast, and we've had everybody from from Justin Tucker to other I'm pulling a blank now on some of the other Ravens we've had on the show.
Torrey Smith.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And when, obviously the game you play on the field is 162 games. So injury is possible just because of the magnitude of the season. But when you see these hits and you see what's happening to these young men, do you think the league is doing enough to protect them?
I mean, football, we've had conversations with this. Football is a completely separate business entity. There's injuries that happen. We know it. We get torn ACLs, blown out ankles, blown out shoulders. Obviously, concussions are now a big topic and a very cause for concern. Last night was completely different than anything I've ever seen on the field. I mean, you're talking Hank Gathers type things. You're taking it to a completely different era of things, and there's going to be a big investigation, but has to be more safety. Is a continued conversation I know with the NFL, and just as a fan of the sport, it's tough. It's tough, and you said people always say you know what you're getting into, but
well, the thing they're saying it could be this hit to the heart. There's only been 200 cases of those in the country, and over the years, so it's a really rare event for it to happen, and it could be something, an underlying condition. When you were playing, I would imagine they're investing a lot of money in you. How exhaustive were those physicals?
Well, the physicals were exhaustive because they're investing a lot of money, like you said. I mean, it's simple though, blood work and orthos and stuff like that, just to see if your body can hold up for, I guess, a 10-year span, and just see what's going on. And they do everything, and the teams know what's going on. That's why I think you see a lot of coaches and former players, battling ailments or anything like that, but they're able to find them early because the teams do really, really extensive and thorough physical. So if something was the underlining, for sure that would have been caught, because these teams, if I'm giving you millions of dollars, I'm gonna make sure that you are a thoroughbred, just like the horses. So
Yeah.
that's how athletes are treated. We are commodities, and they make sure that we're good to go.
I was a big fan of Bob Gibson as a kid growing up. One of the greatest pitchers of all time, without a doubt, but also one of the toughest SOBs, right? He hated to play in the All-Star game because he didn't like to be friends with guys he'd have to pitch with later on, right? He was he was famous for a quote that an intentional walk is a waste of 3 pitches. And that mentality has been kind of, and as it should be, I think, kind of pushed out of the game. I mean, my take from getting to know athletes such as yourself and others is like, you're in this game a short period of time. You're going to have life afterwards with children and just other business interests and stuff. You don't want to end the game up horizontal, right? You want to be able to have your body intact, and you can still entertain. We can still play this game. Not to put you on the spot, but should more be done to protect these young men?
There should be. Obviously, there always should be. Safety is the number one thing going forward. But at the end of the day, it's the bottom line. It's about money. And you've seen over the last, I say probably decade, you've seen a lot of high profile athletes retire early when they still had something left in the tank. But all these guys are battling something, battling knee injuries, battling hips. People don't see the what goes on behind the scenes. They see the every night baseball game. They see the basketball game. They see the football game. They don't see the hours of treatment behind the scenes. And some of these guys are like, look, I made enough money. I got a good reputation. I'm smart with it. I'm tired of killing myself. And I was the same way. Like, I killed myself for baseball. And it just comes a point when you're like, look, I'm smart. I'm young enough. I got little kids. Like, I got an 8 and 6-year-old. If I'm hobbling, that's not going to be fun for them. They need me out there active. So, it's beneficial for a lot of these athletes to understand that, look, there's a lot of money in this game. And if you're fortunate and you're smart enough, hey, don't kill yourself for it no more, because as you see, the game will pass you on and it will leave you in the dust with not even a trail.
Well, I look at Lamar Jackson, who is one of my favorite players in the league. I just like his attitude. I like the way he plays.
Oh,
I can tell he loves the fans, and and he's battling back. And I don't know what's going to happen to him next year, but he's one of these young men who is just so talented, but in such a fragile skill position that something could happen. I worry about them. You said something once on your podcast. Again, we're talking to Adam Jones, a 5-time All-Star. His podcast is called Adam Jones Podcast. You said something about you chose security at one point because of your family and everything, as opposed to free agency and going out there and see. And it rung a bell with me, because I think that's almost something I've met attorneys and agents that have consulted their athletes to think like that. Get money. There's enough money here for you to live a good life, your kids to go to college and their kids to go to college. It's a real good situation. I think sometimes in the NFL, especially, the salaries aren't guaranteed. It's a long, brutal season. It's not 162 games, but
it's a long season.
It's a long season, and you keep adding to it, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just wonder, moving forward, how this game has to change. I mean, I don't know if maybe the linemen could start standing up, we've talked about this before. This was not an injury that had anything to do with a hit, as far as we know. It could be. We're going to talk to a cardiologist in a few minutes. But I just think moving forward, there has to be some way to be able to play this game at that intensity without worrying about, somebody losing their life or their brain,
Well, the biggest thing is there isn't one way to play the game with all those things that we wish and want. It's like UFC, like in boxing. There's no really scientific way, I believe, to play it without injuries. It just isn't a way. I mean, if you tell football players, it's a car crash happening every single play. And we had Trevor Price on my podcast. He said the linemen are the ones that wrestle. It's them linebackers, safeties, running backs, fullbacks who are the ones that get a running start and just pound each other. And, this game's been going on for a long time. And my father-in-law, Gene Fugate, always says, he said, hey, you only got so many hits in your body. It depends on how many hits. He played in the 70s, and he's like, them boys wore me out in the 70s. Obviously a different era, probably leather, leather,
Yeah.
leather helmets I worry about. But
Uh,
there's no full way to play this game, to play the game of football or to play any sport without injuries. And I'm teaching my kids that now, that you playing a sport, you playing football, soccer out here in Spain, you're going to get kicked. You're going to get knees. If you're going to play a sport, you're going to get hurt at some capacity. You play golf, your back, your knees. I feel it in my knees now from golfing so much. Like, damn.
well, I think of, like, when I first started, I worked in Baltimore for 8 years at WBAL, and my first week I met Brooks Robinson, and what a sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah.
I mean, but he was moving. He played for 22 seasons, and when he left the game, he didn't have a dime.
But what
You
was
know,
he doing in the offseason also? Because that era, I mean,
selling cars. That's what they were
exactly,
doing.
Palmer all the time, and it was great to talk to him because I wanted to know about that old era, and you know, those guys were selling cars, selling real estate, worked at furniture stores. They were working. In today's era, I mean, these guys have vacation homes, building homes all over the world because obviously the money is different, and they're the reason why. The older guys are the reason why we're able to, the sacrifice they made, they were able to have this money. And we, in today's society in sports, we don't need to kill ourselves anymore. If you're smart enough, secure enough, look, don't continuously beat your body up because you think that, okay, it's never going to stop. And I thought I was going to play to 40 years old. 36 came and I'm like, it's time. And because I look at my kids, I'm like, I'm smart with my money. Hopefully I can, with these good looks, I can keep a job later in life, get a job later in life and stay around the game. But my kids are most important, and being active with my wife and all this traveling, we talk about it all the time. And you can't do that hobble.
Well, you're an ambassador for the Major League Baseball, and I like the way you think. I think that you're from San Diego as well. You've met Bill Walton, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
He contemplated suicide. He was in such pain with his back, running up and down the court all those years, and people just don't get it. I guess if there's something here, I would like to see, young boys and girls not be playing hard contact sports until well after puberty.
Yeah.
And to try to avoid some of those injuries, and also, in the NBA. In college basketball, you're not allowed to have a financial advisor your senior year while you're playing, getting ready to sign a contract with the NBA. And that's exactly the time you need it, for somebody to set you up right, because we all know the pressure. You don't want to abandon your friends. You get into the league, you go from the streets to making millions of dollars, and you want to take care of your friends. You want to do that. But, I guess if I was trying to put a finger on this thing, it's, I see these multi-billionaire owners who never leave the sanctity of their box, with a few exceptions. There's some good guys out there, and we know them.
Yeah, really good. There's some really good owners.
Yeah. And when I saw that kid last night, my wife and I were like, tears in our eyes. I'm just imagining his poor mother in that ambulance going to the hospital. And I know these things happen, but I would like to be able to see some sort of net for these guys when it does,
I mean, I think people need to just understand that, again, we're entertainers. We get paid a lot of money because you're coming to see us. Are we the most important people in the world? Of course not. Doctors are. I believe doctors are. But we're human, and we're taking a risk, yes. But at the same time, we're entertaining people, and we get hurt. But we're human. We want to go home to our families, but we're gifted. We're gifted at an amazing sport, and we're using that gift, but at the same time, we're human. You got to understand that. And we take our lumps and bruises. We get depressed. We get sad. We get angry. I don't see anybody tweeting nurses and doctors that, you mess up this and that. They go through all their BS and all that stuff.
Right.
But we go through so much, and it's like,
you may be an entertainer, but I saw you run into center field walls a few times.
Yeah, I was doing that. I was entertaining people. The ball, I had to go catch the ball from my teammate. And I'm entertaining, and you have to understand that I'm human. I got feelings too. And if I struck out, you think I'm not mad? You don't think my teammates? I'm mad too. I don't need to hear it from y'all.
Yeah.
But it's the world we live in. It's the access. But at the same time, the positive of it is so much love and support for Hamlin. I mean, it's amazing, and just shows that people are watching. People really do care. I just hope that the right people care. Which is
I think you're an exception in the league, and that you've made the right moves, and you pass it on to others too as well. You be well, my friend. We'll see you soon. See you next week or so. Okay.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Steve. Bye. Again, Adam Jones, 5-time Major League All-Star. Nice enough to join us to talk a little bit about this. I think about people. I've only met a couple owners. I was fortunate once to be in the owner's box of a Ravens game with David Modell. And I don't know if you know the whole story of the Modells. That used to be the Cleveland Browns, and then they moved to Baltimore. They left Cleveland. I had family in Cleveland. I had family in Baltimore, and I understand how that business works. I know that when the owners took the team out of Baltimore in 1983. And again, I'm a DC guy, and we lost the Washington Senators when I was at the little thing. I mean, sports has an undeniable impact in our lives, and it means so much to all of us. And I think the thing that most of us don't understand is just how dedicated these young men are, and it's not just about the money, right? It's not. You saw those guys on the field last night crying for this kid, Damar Hamlin, who was, the latest we have, he's still in critical condition. And we're just hoping his vitals came back on last night to normal. They got him back up to normal. Those are real serious EMTs on the sideline. They did a great job. They gave him, I didn't see the CPR and I'm glad I didn't. But when I heard about it, I was just hoping that he'd be okay. But I think about back to the ownership of this game, and wherever the word came for these guys to warm up for 5 minutes and go back out on the field is mind-numbing. And I'm sure we'll find out as we move forward, or maybe not. I was watching ESPN like a lot of you, and I think it's Booger McFarland was talking about, we just got to cancel this game. And I'm sure the NFL doesn't like former players or announcers, call them out, but this is a no-brainer. You give a guy CPR on the field. I know there's 60,000 people in the stands. I know, I get all that. And the other side I mentioned a little bit earlier that bothered me tremendously was the idea that somehow right wingers would take to this event, this horrible event, and try to ascribe their ignorance towards vaccines. That's a whole nother thing. Vilma writes, there's some physical issues that can be undetected in football. The league doesn't have procedures that they follow when a player is unexpectedly seriously injured on the field. And you're right. They don't. Again, to finish your point, I don't believe the players need sensitivity training. It's the head people in the National Football League. Well, I've known a few professional athletes. I know Adam really well. The football players I've known, I had I said this on the show before, I had the opportunity once to shake Johnny Unitas's hand. I actually worked with his son, who was a salesperson at WBAL Radio. Johnny Unitas, for you youngsters out there, is considered by many as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And I shook his hand. It was like holding a bag of rocks. There was another Baltimore player that I knew as a kid, John Mackey, who was in the Hall of Fame, a tight end, who used to torture my Washington football team. I saw him in his 50s. And his brain was so gone from CTE, and he died not much long after that. I think the point here is that, you look at this league and you ask these questions about what's right and what's not right. I got to tell you, I don't know how to fix this game. I have some ideas I think that would help. I think having a lineman standing up and using their hands instead of their heads and shoulders. I think allowing the cornerbacks to push the receivers all the way across the field so they're not running full speed and get hit. I think that would help. I think, kicking somebody out of the league who targets somebody with their head or taking half their salary, that'll get their attention. There's only a few players like that now in the league who do this. And I get it. And part of it's the coaching. You have to teach kids how to play this game differently. I don't know. Laurie writes, it's interesting. The game on Paramount Plus has a plot line about a player health coverage in the NFL for past and present players, more focused on CTE, but player health in general too. When I hear these stories about these young men, and by the way, in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Pulitzer Prize winner David K. Johnston, and we'll talk more about what's going on with Kevin McCarthy and the House of Representatives, which will not be able to convene if they don't have a speaker. They can't do anything. They can't even swear people in without a speaker. So that has to happen before anybody can be sworn in. And right now he doesn't have the votes, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. And we'll also hopefully talk a little bit later on about, where this all lays. Anyway, so this is, we are, do we have a, this is again live here. We're not going to be able to hang on just one second, folks. No, I'll be right with you. All right. We are, again, doing this live, and this is one of the issues that, I sometimes have to deal with on this. This is a little heads up for Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's watch this.
Factory. But here's the problem, Steve. My friends in the Freedom Caucus and Matt and Lauren Boebert and others, they don't know how to make the art of the deal because they aren't willing to take the win when they have one. They're making this about never, Kevin, and that is the wrong move.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And thank you, Doctor. We're going to have to get Dr. Fair on at a different time. We had some technical issues. It's one of those days. It's like, it's not Monday, but it's kind of like Monday, right? That, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about the Freedom Caucus. There's an ironic name, if you ever saw. And I think part of this is, the thing that bothers me, I think the most when I look at what's happening in Washington right now, and I'm just going to combine it a little bit with the tragedy from last night. There's a total disconnect here, right? I mean, if you stop and think about it, we have 340 million Americans in this country, and in the states where we see high unemployment, we see decaying infrastructure, we see places like Jackson, Mississippi, where you can't drink the water, or Flint, Michigan, where it's poisonous, and you don't hear. I'll be honest with you. You don't hear the Republican Party talk at all about this, and this is the part. This is the part that really scares me and bothers me the most. Is that if you have a infrastructure bill from this last Congress, okay, and this is, I guess I'm going to kind of blame the Democrats on this as well. We have to figure a way to be able to share success with the other party, even, and maybe especially when there are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, because at some point, the federal government is the only answer and only solution for many of these people that are battling this kind of life. Some of you may know people like this in different parts of the United States. I've told this story before, and I'll tell it again in the book, The Fifth Risk by Michael Lewis. There's a scene where, and the fifth risk is essentially, the other four risks are nuclear war, bioweapons, things like that. But the fifth risk, which he refers to, is having a government that doesn't know what it's doing and threatens the lives of people because of it. And in this particular scene, a federal official from Health and Human Services during the Obama administration goes down to celebrate the opening of a new water treatment plant in Mississippi, not in Jackson, though, I believe in Tupelo, if I recall. Anyway, the governor of the state of Mississippi says to the federal official, "Can you please not say that this is the federal government, because they hate the federal government here." I mean, this is an opportunity to save people's lives. I told a story last week about the prescriptions and the triplicate in prescriptions that helped save many states from overdoses during the opioid crisis, the 20-year opioid crisis, where 1 million Americans died. But the states that required federal regulations about the distribution of these opioids, they showed significantly fewer numbers. Give me an example. Massachusetts, which had no regulation about the prescription of opioids, no federal regulation, had close to 80,000 overdose in their one state alone. New York State, which required triplicate prescriptions, and obviously you could track where the pills were going, they had 37, 80,000 to 37. So this is an opportunity for the federal government to shine. The infrastructure bill could have been better. It was compromised, like much legislation. But now with this Freedom Caucus and with the leftovers from the big lie from the Trump administration, we find ourselves in a very unique position where we can't even put together a Congress unless Kevin McCarthy is somehow voted in. And there's last I read, there were 11 to 12 Republicans who said they wouldn't vote for him. Joining us right now is David K. Johnson, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, author, and founder of DCReport.org. His book, The Big Cheat: How Donald Trump Fleeced America and Enriched Himself and His Family, is out right now. I do believe it's been released. Has it been released yet, David?
Oh, that book came out a year ago. The paperback just came out.
Just came out. That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So, watching and listening to the members of the Freedom Caucus, I'm torn, because as much as McCarthy bothers me and his weak leadership, tepid leadership, to say it the best, I also, the people that oppose him are many are the former Trump big lie cabal.
Right.
Where do you stand on this? Where is this going? Is there going to be a vote today? Will he be voted in today?
I have no idea. It's entirely possible he won't be. I mean, I've made it a point for all of my career to cover Washington without being there. When Reagan was elected, I proposed to the LA Times that I be made the 4th White House correspondent. Paper had 3. And the rule was I didn't get to leave Los Angeles County, and I would just cover the paperwork, which is what Charlie Savage, when he was at the Boston Globe, won his Pulitzer for 40 years later, was my idea. But whether McCarthy wins or not, this is going to be quite the show to watch. The Republicans don't have any philosophy anymore, except maybe tax cuts. But remember, they used to call themselves the party of ideas. I'm sorry,
I don't remember that
from these folks. McCarthy, who represents the area down around Bakersfield, where there's a lot of oil and orange trees that get water from the Sierras, has no ideology that anyone can discern except I should be speaker. And it's going to be just fascinating to watch. If McCarthy becomes speaker, people like Matt Gaetz, who I don't understand why he hasn't been indicted, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who preaches family values while she's a serial adulteress, and others like them, Lauren Boebert, who can't pay her bills but somehow has a lot of money.
Well, Lauren Boebert also had 2 failed to appears and
Yes.
Warrants for her arrest, and her husband was arrested for indecent exposure. Everything about it. She won by 500 votes.
Deciding what the issues are that Congress is going to deal with. I'm sorry. This is going to be great comedy, tragic comedy, but great comedy.
So let me ask you a question. If just a speculative question, if McCarthy himself doesn't manage to get 218 votes, which is the majority in the 435 seats, what will happen? I mean, somebody could run who has absolutely never been vetted. They could, people don't understand this too. You can have a Speaker of the House that's not even a member of the House. So
right. In fact, Chip, I might write my congressperson and recommend you.
Thank you.
You don't have to be a lawyer to be on the Supreme Court either. Well, the scenario I would, of course, love to see, because it's going to be entertaining to watch, is they're in complete disarray. But here's a possibility to think about. And remembering Nancy Pelosi is going to go down as the greatest speaker in history, and she really knows how to work the Congress. You can dislike her, but you got to respect that she's a great speaker. I can imagine a scenario, if this falls apart this afternoon, where the Democrats come forward and say, tell you what, we'll vote for this Republican X and give a large majority for the speaker. And of course, that speaker is in danger of that support being pulled in the future. But I could see the Democrats voting not straight on party lines, but with the leadership's approval for some other respected Republican. The downside for the Democrats, if they do that, is that instead of a clown show that will bring further disrepute on the Republicans, it's going to instead make them look better than they deserve.
Joining us right now is senior editor of the Washington Post, Mark Fisher. Mark, David's here. Say hello.
Hi there,
Mark.
You guys ever met before?
Oh, yeah.
You must have. Yeah. All right. So watching this unfold, like we started off, there's a clown show aspect to this, except for the fact that this is a country that badly needs continued leadership. And I just wonder. It seems to me that the silence coming from the Senate is also a silent worry, a concern that this is, that this House for the next 6 months is going to, go to the judiciary, try to get articles of impeachment against the president. They're going to bring Fauci in. I was talking about this last night, and people, well-known people, were saying that this kid who had apparent some sort of heart issue on the field probably got vaccinated. So I mean, we've seen this kind of disinformation, and that, so I mean, I know you guys shake your heads, but I mean, on Twitter, it's everywhere. Twitter almost broke down last night because of what happened. Mark, what's your guys' reporting saying about today? Do we have a number there? Is there any way he can get to 218?
Well, he doesn't necessarily have to get to 218. He could reach some sort of compromise in which some of the folks who are not on his side are persuaded to vote present rather than to name a particular candidate, in which case he could win with a minority, with a plurality of votes. That happened. Nancy Pelosi won with 216 votes rather than 218 some years back. And so that's a possible compromise, but in order to get there, you've got to persuade people that they're willing to come along with McCarthy becoming the speaker, even if he doesn't get the full vote. So, do they choose to humiliate him and elect him? Maybe that's a long shot. His statement just half an hour ago makes it clear that he's willing to be humiliated. I mean, he went out there and said basically he would do anything, except that he did kind of draw a line in the sand about giving particular gavels, particular chairmanships to different folks who are demanding them. So I don't know. I mean, he did not look like a confident man in that brief appearance before reporters just a little while ago. And there does not seem to be any progress overnight among the five true holdouts and whoever else may join them after a first ballot.
You guys, one thing I read that disturbed the hell out of me was the January 6th committee, instead of handing over their report to Congress, has instead, because they're worried that people like, Beaupert, Gates, whomever, will leak it and leak the anonymous sources who, these are people who witnessed things and came forward and said, these papers have gone to the White House and Homeland Security, and they don't even trust them with the new majority. Is that unusual? Because I've never heard of anything like that before.
Well, it's certainly a sign of the deep mistrust that we see between the parties and even within.
But that's national security stuff. That's people's lives.
Well, I mean, absolutely, and certainly from the Pelosi camp, we heard quite a bit of mistrust to the point that they were not willing to share the kind of material that had been routinely shared in top secret settings. So you're going to see, especially as the Jim Jordans of the world ramp up with these investigations and they make noise about impeachment proceedings and all of that, you're going to see more of an unwillingness to come together on those security issues where there simply cannot be any trust. That said, there's a significant amount of talk on both sides of the aisle that they will be able to get some big things done, whether it be on immigration, on some of the other outstanding issues. And that is something that we have seen in past episodes of divided government, where the parties have managed to come together and in fact see divided government as a period when you can make some progress that you couldn't make otherwise. So that can happen at the very same time as they're so mistrustful that they won't share basic documents with each other.
Let me ask you this, David. Is there a continued communion of ideology between some of these House members and Trump? I mean, the Kinzinger and Cheneys are gone, but I mean, what about Boebert? What about Green? What about Gates? What about Jordan? Are they still communicating?
Or Stefanik here in New York.
Right.
Clearly, there's a whole coterie of people who have embraced Trump, and even if he's gone, continue to embrace these crazy ideas that are circulating around our society. Now, you know, we've always had this in America. Hofstadter wrote in the 50s about the paranoid society, political paranoia. And this isn't new, but it's gained a great deal of traction for, I think, two important reasons. One is the ability to spread things via the internet, and many people don't understand how to do the simplest things to check something. But secondly, let's not forget that for the last 40 years, we have been disinvesting in public education. About 15% of high school students get a first-rate education, the equivalent of going to a private school. The other 85% don't. And we're in a situation now where more than half of adults read at sixth grade level or below, and 1 in 5 read at third grade level or below. How easy to manipulate people, make them fearful, and at the same time, have a culture that looks down on them and tells them you're stupid. Well, you're not stupid. You just got robbed of an education. And that plays, I believe, heavily into this fear of secret societies, reptilian agents taking over the bodies of officials, coronavirus vaccines causing all sorts of stuff.
Well, you have a presidential candidate in Florida who is now calling for an investigation into those who proposed vaccinations in the state.
Right.
That's frightening on a whole different level. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's still a resounding silence in the House, on the Republican side of the House, for criticizing Trump. We all laugh at him. We've seen just, the buffoonery at, we saw I don't know if you guys saw the video from his New Year's Eve party with Rudy and others there. And it's sad and it's terrifying at the same time. Mark, when your reporters, I talked to Philip a lot, Philip Bump, and there's an incredulity here to some of this, and the reporting's got to be difficult when you write things down that people go, oh, that can't possibly be true, but it happened. Over the next 6 months, is there a voice in this House of Representatives on the Republican side that can keep them from destroying their political chances in not only off year, but in 2024?
Well, it's a great question, and there's no one who really jumps to mind, because the folks who would be doing it, whether it be Kevin McCarthy or Steve Scalise, have shown that they don't have the backbone, they don't have the standing among the extremists in their conference to bring people together or to push them toward compromise. Elise Stefanik, just even as we're speaking, is nominating Kevin McCarthy, and she is boasting that the House Republicans won a majority while the Senate Republicans lost a seat. So there's this sort of, we're doing better than you are kind of high school kind of rhetoric going on, a triumphalism that doesn't exactly seem supported by the results of the November elections. And so this is not a group that is looking for compromise or looking for progress. It's rather a group that wants to score some rhetorical points, and they recognize that they're deeply divided among themselves, but they haven't figured out a way to come together.
What do the Democrats do, guys, right now? There's opportunity here. There's so many things going on right now in this country, obviously with not only with health, but with infrastructure. You mentioned education, defense, whatever's going on in Ukraine. Will funding for Ukraine be stopped with this Republican House majority?
I don't think so. There does seem to be still a very strong majority for continued support for Ukraine. There's obviously some fraying around the edges in both parties, on the far left of the Democratic Party, and certainly among some of the Trumpers in the Republican Party. And obviously, the more we spend, the longer it goes on, the more it seems like a stalemate, the more likely that support is to fray around the edges. But it does seem to be primarily around the edges. And there, as you saw in the response to Zelensky's appearance before Congress, you had the Lauren Boeberts of the world sitting there with their arms crossed, being obstreperous, but for the most part, the majority is holding. And as much as there is a kind of emerging sympathy for the Russians on the fringes of both parties, it does not seem to be a mainstream view at this point.
That reminded me of. Go ahead, David.
Well, I think what you're going to see are hearings about nonsense. Hunter Biden's laptop, someone who will tell you Benghazi, if you say to them, well, what did they find in the end? Well, they found Benghazi. And it's like, no, they found absolutely nothing. Read their report. It says, hey, we held all these hearings and there's nothing there. And they're going to do that. And if the Democrats have any smarts about it, they will exploit that. The reason, you could argue the whole reason that there's a majority of Republicans is New York State. 5 seats were flipped here, and there have been some very good analysis. I put a link up to one of them at my Twitter account that go into the just rank amateur hour Bush League conduct of New York State Democrats who've grown fat, lazy, and complacent because the state is so blue. If New York had just kept the seats that they had and the new governor had not been so inexperienced at state level politics as opposed to Buffalo, Erie County politics, we might still have a Democratic majority in the House.
I just tell people that in 2024, there'll be twice as many Democratic Senate seats up than Republicans.
Yeah.
And again, it's not impossible that somebody like DeSantis or even Trump, I don't know. I can't even begin to prognosticate that kind of nonsense. But looking forward, it seems, who could have seen the, other than, epidemiologists and virologists, who could have seen the pandemic coming and what it would do, not only to, politics, but the economy and of course, 1 million lives just here in the United States. And it seems as though, you mentioned the Zelensky appearance before the House. It reminded me a little bit of Bush coming before the House after 9/11. That kind of solidarity, you just don't see it that often, that kind of emotional solidarity. I've had 2 friends, Brian Karam, who is a White House reporter who went to Ukraine, and also Malcolm Nance, whom we all know, and to hear their stories of these people and the resilience of these people, the dogged determination to stand up against our enemy and have, hundreds of thousands of their country members die. And for us to pretend and to listen to voices like Marjorie Taylor Greene belittle that, or Beaupert, or any of these. We are in a quagmire of sorts. Let me end this thing by asking you guys again about what's going to happen today with McCarthy. It's back east. It's coming up on 1 o'clock. What time was this vote supposed to happen? Do we know, Mark?
There should be a first vote within the next hour, and then it's going to be, if there are continued ballots, they'll probably be every 2 or 3 hours after that. I heard somewhere that they might get in 3 rounds today if it goes that far. This could go on for quite some days, theoretically, and there does not seem to be any movement at this point. So it's going to be, the first vote will be dramatic and will be covered on TV and so on. As we go into subsequent rounds, people may start to tire of the parliamentary rigmarole, but the fact that we're at this point and don't know the outcome, that tells you the historic nature of what we're seeing. This if it goes beyond 1 ballot, this will be the first time in a century that
exactly 100 years, right? Exactly 100 years, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Just off the top of your head, both you guys, David, anybody jump in your mind as somebody, if McCarthy is not the guy, is it possible in your mind there could be Jim Jordan, maybe?
Well, one would hope not somebody like Jim Jordan, but someone who's a responsible grown-up and behaves well. But can I just jump back to one thing before we go? You brought up the pandemic, and nobody could have seen this coming. I sat through a lecture in college in the late 60s. We will have another pandemic. Obama created a national security team to deal with and be on the lookout for pandemics that Trump destroyed. And we're going to have more of these because nothing loves modern international jetliner flights than viruses.
Yeah. Well, and, you go back, and Michael Lewis brought it up very well in his book, The Premonition, that when we politicized the head of the CDC, we totally screwed it up. It should have been obviously, you move through the ranks there by, actions and acumen and, all that, and not politics. And of course, that's the problem when you have, the president of the United States telling the head of the CDC, ignore this because it's bad politically. And that's exactly what happened, So there are a lot of issues with that. And you're right. I mean, again, I keep going back to Michael Lewis, but his, and there are a lot of other great books about the federal government, but to me, everyone should read The Fifth Risk because everything he predicted in there came true, with all of these agencies understaffed. And, that's what I tell people. You could have a 2024, you could have a Donald Trump-like leader, you could have a Senate and a House that are run by Republicans, maybe even 67 votes in the Senate and a 6-3 SCOTUS. It should be enough for every super PAC in America that's a Democratic super PAC to raise a lot of money. It's a frightening scenario. Thank you so much for your last minute joining, everybody. I really appreciate it. Mark Fisher, senior editor at the Washington Post. I get that right. I sometimes call you the, yeah, I know. David K. Johnston, dcreport.org. Thank you, guys. Be well. All right.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks. All right. Thank you. All right. So we'll keep you guys up to date on this as to, well, I'm not going to be on when the vote happens, but later on today, Nikki Maduro will be on from 12 to, Mark Thompson's on from 10 to 12, and then Nikki from 12 to 2. This show starting next week is going to go to just one show a week, and but I'm going to be posting a lot more, so there'll be a lot more, but only one live show a week. Just because you guys are great, and I really, really appreciate you being here. I'm looking down here, and by the way, you can, if you want to be part of our email list, you can just send me an email at chip@chipfranklin.com. But anyway, looking forward here, Kevin McCarthy is, again, here in California, and I worked up in KGO in San Francisco for a long time. And Bakersfield, for those of you that don't know, is kind of it's a desert sort of, it's a combination of mountains, desert, and agriculture. And everything from Fresno, Modesto, these towns along there are in California, and they're extremely red, right? And when I say extremely red, they really are. I mean, I remember driving from Los Angeles to San Francisco, which is a hell of a drive. It's basically a 4-lane road, 2 lanes, and there's trucks. It takes forever, and it just drives insane. But as you go through there, you see the pleas for irrigation and attacking Pelosi and others. When the bottom line is agriculture should not be an issue, a partisan issue. Water should not be a partisan issue. Infrastructure should not be a partisan issue. We have, the Bay Bridge. If you ever go to the Bay Area, the Bay Bridge takes you from Oakland to San Francisco, and there's some architects and designers that say that bridge is in bad shape. It was built poorly, and there's serious issues. And it takes 100,000 people a day going across that sucker minimum. So I guess the question really here is while we debate McCarthy, who is honestly not a particularly bright guy. And I saw Zoe Lofgren on MSNBC, I believe it was last night, speaking to the issue I mentioned before, the frightening issue that the 9/11 commission, the January 6th commission, they're packing up the papers and they're not giving it to the next Congress because they know that these Republicans are incapable of dealing with these issues in a responsible manner. And that's just sad in so many ways. Joining us right now is the remarkable, the incomprehensible, Nikki Maduro. She's here.
More adjectives.
Were you watching Monday night game last night?
I watched it on replay. My husband we were at my in-laws for dinner, and my husband's like, I think somebody died at the game. And I'm thinking instantly like newswoman, like somebody fell off somebody's drunk, somebody fell. He's like, no, a player. And I mean, we watched obviously the replay. We've seen it over and over again. And obviously, along with what the world is praying for him to recover, but it's scary. And, I have a nephew. He's about to turn 15 years old. He looks like he's 17. He's a linebacker. He's already had a couple concussions, and it is you can't even bring up not playing football, and everybody gets all defensive about it. And so we'll be talking about that today during the show. It's, we know this is a dangerous game. I've been doing this new feature called Why Do You Do It? And God, I'd love to find maybe a retired football player or coach or somebody. Like, how do you see young men put their bodies through what they put it through? I mean, I know the money, I know the adoration, I know the love of the game, and I love football,
Yeah.
but it's hard to watch stuff like that happen and still feel okay putting kids and putting that mentality of this is a great game for you to be in and starting them so young. It's I'm really conflicted about the whole thing.
Well, I had Adam Jones on, who was a 5-time Major League All-Star, and he has a podcast that I produce, and we have a lot of Baltimore Ravens on the show.
Oh, nice.
And we were talking to Justin Tucker, who's a kicker, arguably the GOAT of kicking, right? And he was talking about just what he sees on these kickoffs sometimes, and just the hits. You can hear. It's frightening, he says. In the NFL films, he thinks somehow censored out the cries of pain and agony when these
it
guys
has to be. Like, look at, sometimes I watch some of these hits, and I mean, I was watching McCaffrey during our game on Sunday, and the hits he was taking, he just like bounces right up. And I even said to myself, I'm like, I wonder if they bounce up so quickly, like they're trying to escape the pain, right? You ever see people like they hit their leg roll and they try to walk it off? I can't imagine what these guys' bodies go through. I hit my shin on the edge of the table. I'm down for the day, and it's just,
well, when I was in high school, I was a quarterback, and I got hit. It was I ran a quarterback sneak, and I'm running down the field, and I'm not real fast, right? And I'm looking to my left, and this kid, a safety, running full speed, hits me as I turn into him, and I was unconscious as soon as he hit me, and the ground woke me up when I hit the ground, right?
Oh, geez.
And so they did smelling salts, and I played in the second half.
And that's the problem too. I mean, and there's a lot of debate of whether or not the NFL was the one that said they weren't going to continue to play. Although I think now they're kind of like, oh no, I don't know where that news was coming from. We were never going to continue the game. And then you saw Skip Bayless's tweet that he's getting vilified for.
Well, he did
which
try to
honestly, the
fix
whole
it at the
thing
end.
wasn't a bad tweet if you read the whole thing.
Right,
He should
right,
have
right.
started with,
Yeah.
the football doesn't matter anymore, but he ended with it, and people only read so far.
Well,
so.
and Ron Filipkowski, do you follow him on Twitter? Ron,
I don't think so.
Great,
No.
you should too. He's great. It's not a P Philip, it's Filip. Anyway, he was going around and grabbing all of the right wingers, and some like Kelly McEnany did this too, talking about when these people have heart issues that has something to do with vaccines.
Oh, I know. Kevin Sorbos or whatever that ascot's name is. Yeah, it's the jab. Screw you. Like,
well, obviously, yeah. But
they're just trolls that want attention. Like, it's awful.
I know, but here is some of them are in Congress. Again, I said this earlier. We had Mark Fisher and David K. Johnson on. The DeSantis is going to start investigations into officials who supported vaccines in the state.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Gaetz is pushing the Florida legislature, and will push in Congress to allow businesses to tell people not to wear masks in their businesses. Right? I mean, all of it's insane. But it's more than just insane. It's pathetic and sad and dangerous and all.
Well, they just want attention. I think it's similar to people blaming the vaccine for what happened on the field, to what's happening in Congress. They just want attention. They think it's going to raise their brand. I bet more than half the time, they don't even believe their own BS. But they're going to do it because they only care about themselves.
So you're on at
noon.
5. So that'd be like 2 or 3 o'clock back east. We probably won't have a speaker yet.
Well, I have the CNN updates on. I want to pop some popcorn. I just want to see Kevin McCarthy keep going down. I mean, obviously, so I think Andy Biggs is getting a couple votes. Yeah. So
they're starting the vote right now?
So the House is now voting on the new speaker. That was like 6 minutes ago. Hakeem Jeffries for the Democrats was put into the nomination, as was Kevin McCarthy. And then Andy Biggs is also supposed to get, and he's a hard writer. I mean, Gosar put him up. So
yeah. Well, I mean, Mark brought up a good point. Mark Fisher, the senior editor of the Washington Post, he said that what will most probably happen is McCarthy will win, but not with a majority of plurality, because people will say present, but they won't vote. So those that oppose him will just they'll save face by doing it that way. But who knows?
I hope he doesn't get it. I mean, that little weasel.
But would you rather have Jim Jordan?
No, but I don't think Jim Jordan's. I don't know who's going to get it. The GOP is imploding. That's why I pop popcorn.
I mean,
Biggs
somebody
ain't going to get it. I mean, he's not going to get it.
Well, obviously, but I mean, so McCarthy's a one, but we can't swear anybody in until we get a speaker.
Well,
That's the crazy part of this.
I
This
know.
person's sworn in, and how do you swear him in? If
But
you
it
don't
just shows how splintered the GOP is, which you just love to see it, Chip. I know it's our democracy and all that, but screw him. I'll take the day.
All right. That's the one and only Nikki Maduro, whose show kicks off at 12. We'll see you later, kiddo. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. You can follow her. Just, go to YouTube and Nikki Maduro show. It's always a great show, and it starts right at 12. Mark Thompson's show kicks in about 30 seconds, actually. In fact, it already started. I'm late. All right. Back tomorrow for our Wednesday edition. Obviously, we'll have some more to report on that. We'll, keep our our hopes up for this kid, and hopefully he'll get better. And we'll, learn a little bit more about things we can do to make people safe in the violent world of NFL football. All right, I'm out of here. Thank you so much. You can, again, email me at chip@chipfranklin.com. If you know people, tell them to subscribe to the show. I always appreciate it. And until tomorrow, see you.
I can handle things. I'm smart.
We shall overcome. Yes, we can.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
What the fuck is wrong with you?